right, so are you ready to take a trip with me today? We're going on a journey, tracing how Christianity spread beyond the Roman Empire.
It's a wilder ride than people realize, let me tell you.
And to navigate this, we've got Lamin, Sanneh's Disciples of All Nations as our trusty guide. I gotta say, even skimming through it, I was like, whoa, this is some next level stuff.
Sanneh doesn't mess around. He really digs deep. One of his main points is that the early challenges Christians faced within the Roman Empire, the persecution and stuff, actually helped Christianity spread.
Wait, so being public enemy number one was actually good for them? How does that even work?
It's kind of counterintuitive, right? But think about it. They were already seen as dangerous outsiders, a threat to Roman authority and their traditional Roman gods. So they had to get super clear about what they stood for. Their message became about something much bigger than just one place or group of people. It was universal.
So not just for a select few, then.
Exactly. And that's what made it so powerful. And then you have figures like Paul who take this universal message and tailor it for people who were completely unfamiliar with Judaism. These are the Gentiles, folks who didn't grow up with synagogues and Jewish customs.
It's like he's translating the message, but not just the language.
It's deeper than translation. It's adaptation in action. There's this great example Sanneh uses where Paul uses the Jewish temple, something everyone knew, to explain these complex spiritual concepts. Can you imagine trying to explain something so abstract to people with a totally different worldview?
Oh, that's really clever. He's taking something familiar and using it as a bridge to something new. So this whole idea of translation being key, it's not just about words, right?
You're picking up what I'm putting down. Sanneh's brilliance is in showing how language, culture, and faith all weave together. Christianity didn't just wipe out existing cultures. It blended in, adapted, became part of the fabric.
Okay, so integration, not obliteration. But I have to imagine that wasn't always easy. I mean, you've got this new faith encountering other established beliefs. There's got to be some tension there.
Totally. And Sanneh tackles those clashes head on, especially when it comes to other major religions. Like, think about Christianity's interactions with Islam.
Yeah, makes sense. They were expanding in a lot of the same areas, bound to bump into each other.
And those encounters weren't always peaceful. Sanneh talks about this incredible debate between a Muslim caliph and political and religious leader and a Christian patriarch. Imagine this war of words, each one convinced of their own truth, challenging the other's beliefs.
Oh, wow. It's like a theological showdown. But it also shows how interconnected these faiths were, even when they were disagreeing.
And here's the thing, it wasn't a one-way street. We tend to think about Christianity influencing the West, but Sanneh flips the script. He talks about Islamic scholarship having a profound impact on European thinkers, even someone like Dante.
Dante. The poet. Seriously. Okay, that's blowing my mind a little. It just goes to show that there's always more to the story.
Speaking of shaking things up, Sanneh doesn't shy away from some of the more difficult topics either, like European colonialism.
Not at all. He dives right into the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all. Because you can't talk about Christianity's global impact without addressing colonialism.
It's definitely a complicated history, and not always pretty. And speaking of complicated, we have to talk about the transatlantic slave trade, which is this dark cloud hanging over the relationship between Christianity and Africa.
Such a tragic period, for sure. And Sanneh really wrestles with the role that Christian missions played in all of that. It's easy to make judgments, but he encourages us to look closer.
It's like, don't judge a book by its cover, right? Or in this case, maybe don't judge a whole faith by some of its loudest voices. Exactly. And Sanneh brings up these amazing individuals who were fighting against the horrors they saw around them. People like Lorenzo da Silva de Mendoza, this priest who put everything on the line to challenge the slave trade, all based on his faith.
Wow, so it wasn't everyone just turning a blind eye. These stories of resistance are so important. But even with abolition, Sanneh points out this kind of tragic irony. It's like, okay, you're fixing a broken leg, but you forget to set the bone.
Right. Abolishing the slave trade, obviously the right thing to do. But it also created a whole new set of challenges, especially for African economies that, sadly, had come to rely on that system.
Yeah, it's like trying to untangle a giant knot. You pull one string, and everything shifts in ways you didn't even expect.
And out of that complexity, you see the rise of these independent churches in Africa.
Yeah.
This wasn't just about Africans passively accepting a faith that was imposed on them. No way. This is about agency, about shaping Christianity to fit their own context.
I'm definitely seeing a theme here. Adaptation. But this goes beyond just translating words, right? It's like they're translating the whole vibe of the faith to resonate with their specific experience.
You got it. Sanneh argues that these independent churches were a direct response to colonialism. a way of taking back ownership of their own spirituality. He even tells this story about this guy, Giovanni Huga, who basically calls out these European missionaries for being hypocritical. He's like, you preach all this brotherly love, but where's the love in your actions?
He went there. Ohoga was not afraid to speak truth to power, which kind of reminds me of those charismatic movements Sanneh talks about, like the East African revival. Those seemed full of energy. Were those also pushing back against the status quo?
Big time. They brought this totally unique African spirit to Christianity. They weren't content to just copy what they saw in Europe. They brought in their own music, their own cultural expressions. It was amazing.
So we've gone from the Roman Empire to the heart of Africa, and one thing is clear. Christianity is not a one-size-fits-all religion. It's more like a giant potluck, everyone bringing their own flavor to the table. So where does Sanneh leave us after this wild ride?
Well, he ends by talking about what he calls the Third Awakening. It's like Christianity hit the reset button.
The Third Awakening. Okay, I'm going to need you to unpack that one for me. What is that, and why should we care?
Basically, Sanneh is talking about this huge surge in Christianity happening in the global south and in East Asia. We're talking about places that used to be considered mission fields, now becoming these powerhouses of Christian thought and practice. It's like the center of gravity is shifting right before our eyes.
Wow, that's a pretty big deal. It's like these places are writing their own chapters in the Christian story, not just reading from someone else's script anymore.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so interesting. It forces us to ask, what happens to Christianity when its most vibrant expressions are happening outside of the traditional centers of power?
Right. Like, we've been so focused on one version of Christianity that we've missed the bigger picture.
It makes you wonder if our whole understanding of Christianity needs to evolve to make room for this new reality.
Now, that's a question worth pondering. And speaking of tough questions, does Sanneh address the elephant in the room? I mean, Christianity doesn't exactly have a perfect track record when it comes to, getting along.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
There's no denying that there's a lot of internal tension and debate within the Christian world. And Sanneh doesn't shy away from that.
It's like every family has its disagreements, right? You've got your different branches, your crazy uncles, everyone arguing about politics at Thanksgiving.
And yet, somehow, they're still family.
Exactly. They're bound together by something bigger. And I guess in a way that's what Sanneh is saying about Christianity. It's messy, it's complex, but there's this underlying unity that holds it all together.
Totally. And like any family, it's always evolving, always figuring things out as it goes. Which is why Sanneh leaves us with this really powerful question. What does the future hold for Christianity in a world that's more interconnected than ever?
It's like he's challenging us to look ahead. Because it's not just about preserving the past, it's about shaping the future.
Right. Absolutely. And to do that, we have to be willing to engage with the whole tapestry of Christian experience, the good, the bad, the challenging, and everything in between.
And as we've seen, that tapestry is full of surprises. I mean, who would have thought that a faith that started with a small group of people in the Roman Empire would become this global phenomenon? It really makes you question everything you thought you knew.
It reminds us to stay curious, to be open to new perspectives. Because the story of Christianity isn't over yet. It's still being written.
And the most exciting chapters might be yet to come. Well, folks, there you have it. If you're feeling like you need to take a deep breath after that whirlwind tour of Christian history, we get it. This has been a wild ride. But one thing's for sure, the journey of faith is full of unexpected twists and turns. And that, my friends, is what makes it